Sims Nation, tonight's episode is not about slandering Ric Flair. Ric Flair is one of the greatest professional wrestlers who ever lived. We're going to celebrate that, but we are also going to discuss how public actions, documented controversies, accusations, social media behavior, financial issues, and personal decisions can affect how fans remember a legend. When we discuss accusations, we will identify them as such or as allegations, not proven facts unless they have been publicly confirmed. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Positively Pat Sims Show. I am Positively Pat Sims, and we are discussing what could potentially be a very hot-button topic this morning because, first of all, just discussing Ric Flair can be a very hot topic and hot-button issue for a lot of people in pro wrestling because of a lot of things that have happened over the many, many years that Ric Flair has been in this business. Before we even get started, I want to ask the live chat right here and right now, when you hear the name Ric Flair today, what is the first thing that comes to mind? You might be surprised at what some people might say. We've got annoying in the live chat already. Now, I want to introduce, I got some questions right off the bat. I want to introduce my special guest this morning, first of all, from WANT, and he's one of the best DJs. He is a great show host. He is my good friend. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Benny the Jet Scala. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, my friend. Glad to be here as always.
I love the sunglasses, brother.
Thank you.
I do. I love those. I love that style right there.
Yeah.
Eric Porter says 16-time world champion. Woo. All right, and next up, he is the Diamond Standard. He has a Masters of the Universe collection that anyone would be envious of, and he just recently saw the movie itself, gave me a glowing review of it, so I can't wait to see it. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the one and only Doc Haywood. Good morning, Doc.
Ooh, my shirt costs more than your house. Got the Nature Boy, the Rolexes, the limos, the jets, all over my very nice RSVLTS shirt. Ready to talk about the Nature Boy and the controversies. Good to be here. And yes, everyone should go see the Masters of the Universe movie. Great film. Take your kids, take your wife, take your dog to go see the movie.
Hey, there you go. That's a glowing review right there. Take your dog.
I took Spuds McHaywood, my big American bulldog, bought him a seat. He sat there happy, drooling all over the place.
Also, before we rush into the Ric Flair stuff, I also want to mention that yesterday, big congratulations, my son and apparently little Haywood graduated. Well, not yesterday, Thursday. Sorry, Thursday. Both little Haywood graduated from junior high, and my son Seth, who is a frequent guest on this show, graduated from high school. So a big congratulations to both of them. And of course, here's my I made this Funko Pop of Seth. I couldn't get the white trash facial hair he usually has, so that's the closest I could get. But I also want to say that today is Seth's 18th birthday. So a big happy birthday to Seth. And if you're in the live chat, if you've joined us on YouTube and you're in the live chat, do me a favor. Get some super chats in there. All right? Doesn't matter which one you get. Just do some super chats, because if we reach our goal of 10, then the one and only Doc Haywood is going to lead us all in a rousing rendition of Happy Birthday for the one and only Seth Sims. Now, he's not here in studio with us, but he will be joining us in the live chat later on in the show today. So another big welcome and good morning to everyone in WANT. WANT, of course, is available 24/7 with talk, music, comedy, anything and everything you could want. Just go to pun intended. Just go to WANTradio.com or download the Live 365 app, and you can get it there. And, of course, welcome everyone from YouTube here on the Positively Pat Sims YouTube channel. All right, let's jump into this. Now, Benny, you're on the screen here, and you're a big fan of more old school pro wrestling. We go all the way back to the 70s. Now, if I'd asked you in, say, the mid to late 80s, however, Ric Flair at this point would have been established. He would have been a huge name in professional wrestling. If I was to say, give me one word to describe Ric Flair in the mid to late 80s, what would that word have been?
Can I use maybe a couple of words? I mean,
yeah.
Perfect fit, absolutely perfect fit as the traveling NWA World Heavyweight Champion. You could not have found a better person to fill that role than Ric Flair.
Yep. Doc, how about you? What do you think?
Perfect heel.
Yes.
This guy enveloped what it was. It encapsulated what it meant to be hated by the fans. He was one of those guys you love to hate. I remember when he came into WWF, I did not watch NWA and instantly took a disliking to the real world champion, and was so looking forward to him facing off against Hogan at WrestleMania, and it never happened.
Right.
But still had an amazing match with Macho Man. But yeah, this guy, good grief. He could push every one of your buttons. What a great heel.
Yep. Now, guys, this is going to be kind of a two-part show here. We're going to hit this in two different sections. First, we're going to talk about Ric Flair and the positives about Ric Flair, the legend that is Ric Flair, and why he belongs on wrestling's Mount Rushmore. All right? And let's be real, he's been on a lot of people's Mount Rushmore, but he's also fallen off of that as well. There's a lot of people that 10, 15 years ago, he was on there, and he was on there all the time. And now it's like little by little, he's just trickling off everyone's Mount Rushmore. But then we're also going to discuss Ric Flair post WrestleMania 24, where you get into TNA and some of his later matches, and then we'll start getting into his public incidents, social media behavior, allegations, drinking concerns, money issues, AEW appearances, and why fans have become very conflicted about the Nature Boy. Here's what WWE's own profile lists Flair as. He's a 2-time WWE Hall of Famer. He's a 16-time world champion and one of the most recognizable performers in professional wrestling history. WWE also notes that he became the first active performer inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2008, the night before WrestleMania 24, when he faced Shawn Michaels in his retirement match. So let's get things rolling here. We've got our first segment of the night, and that is why Ric Flair belongs on wrestling's Mount Rushmore. All right, Ric Flair was not just a wrestler. He was the complete pro wrestling package. All right, from character to promo, in-ring storytelling, main event credibility, longevity, influence, championship resume, cultural catchphrases, the ability to make opponents look good. Flair did it all. And we stopped the story at 24, WrestleMania. Ric Flair might have one of the cleanest legendary endings in wrestling history. He had the championships, the promos, the robes, the horsemen, the classic matches, the respect of his peers, and then he had the perfect emotional goodbye. So, Doc, why do you believe, what is the biggest thing that you think makes Ric Flair a Mount Rushmore performer?
That's such a huge question because he really had done it all. Iron Man matches, working so much, the cultural impact he's had. You got rappers talking about Ric Flair drip. I mean, Uh, Even myself, a bit of Dr. Haywood's based on Ric Flair. I would love to go into the ring and tell the plebs in Orville how much money I made, how much better I was than them, and that was what Ric Flair was able to do. Like I said, just the perfect heel, the feuds with Dusty Rhodes, with Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, with Sting, with Hogan. Uh, I mean, the end of his WCW career wasn't that great, and he got his ego beat down a little bit, which in itself was a story. Coming back into WWE and rebuilding that legacy, uh, and like we said, that final match at WrestleMania 24, what a great story! That's such a good story in that match. Sean and Rick and the tears. I mean, it's rare that a wrestling match can bring you to tears, but I remember even old Doc squirted a little bit out of the corner of his eyelids watching Rick take that sweet chin music in the 1, 2, 3.
Right. Doc, or I'm sorry, Benny. Again, you're a big fan of the territory days, a little old school wrestling here. And you mentioned one of Flair's thing. He was a traveling world champion. He could go city to city, territory to territory, and he could make that title feel like the biggest prize in all of pro wrestling, while also making the top guy in that territory look like $1 million. Talk to me a little bit about Flair and how Flair was how important he was during those territory days, even though we were starting to come towards the end of them when WWE started coming in. But how important was Flair in all of that?
Very important. So, let's go to say 1981. You got the WWF, you got the NWA, and you got the AWA. Both the AWA and the WWF were like pretty much a territory. Bruno or Backlund, whoever, Pedro for the WWF, they, wrestled across the entire territory. AWA, if it was Vern Gagne, Nick Bockwinkel, whoever it was, the champion, they wrestled pretty much wherever the AWA went. But the NWA was a different phenomenon. It wasn't a territory. It was a conglomeration of about 20 different territories.
Right.
And the job of the NWA World Champion was to literally go from territory to territory, stay a week or so, and like you said, make that championship appear to be like the crown jewel of professional wrestling. But at the same time, because every territory had a regional champion. I'll give you a good example. There's a great YouTube clip where Flair, I think it was about 84, goes to Memphis, and of course Jerry Lawler is the Southern heavyweight champion, and they really play it up. It's a great segment. Lance Russell is the announcer. Ric Flair is on Memphis TV for the first time, and he's got his phenomenal suit and the belt and a Rolex watch, and he plays it to the hilt.
Yeah.
And then Lawler comes out, and Flair really wants to make sure that everybody understands that although Jerry Lawler is a big thing in Memphis, this is Ric Flair, and I mean I'm sure that he replicated that wherever he went. And one thing to keep in mind too is that was a very prestigious championship, but like a Terry Funk could only do it for a year and a half. It was killing his life and his marriage, and I believe even Jack Briscoe begged off because the travel was. I mean, I've seen the touring schedule; it would kill anybody. But Ric Flair seemed to not only do it, he embraced it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, he, as a professional wrestler, as the touring NWA World Heavyweight Champion in the late 70s, early 80s, he absolutely deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. Now let me ask you guys this, because the man that Flair kind of took the place of, which for some reason my brain shut off for a second. Harley Race. Would you put Flair as an in-ring performer above Harley Race? Benny,
you want to go on that?
Yeah, what do you think?
I don't know that I would put him above Harley Race. He was every much the equal of Harley Race. They had a different style. Yeah, Flair was a little bit more flamboyant. Harley Race. I mean, Harley Race was a lot more realistic, and not only that, Harley Race was legitimately tough, whereas I think Ric Flair was wrestling tough. But I mean, Ric Flair. I mean, he could make anybody. I remember when he was on Memphis TV, he said, "I could wrestle a broom and get a good match out of a broom." I think he could have done that. He was that good.
I agree. Doc, this one's for you. Even through everything, Hulk Hogan still gets put on a lot of wrestling Mount Rushmores, maybe not so much for his contributions in the ring, but because of what he did overall for the business. Do you think that Hogan could have done that in the same way that Flair did? Or did Hogan need that machine like WWE behind him? Do you think that, or do you think Hogan could have been a guy that could have carried the territories in the same way that Flair did?
No, because he had the opportunities to do that, but he never blew up until we got that fusion of Vince and Hulk.
Right.
The WWE. I don't think the WWE could have blown up without Hulk Hogan, but I don't think Hulk Hogan could have blown up without WWE. It was a perfect symbiosis of the two. Ric Flair is a phenomenon, unrivaled by any other pro wrestler with what he did in the territory days, and I would say even after, a very, very unique individual. And watching the ESPN 30 for 30, you kind of understand with his personality why he was on the road so much and why he just totally bought into the character of Ric Flair as opposed to the man Richard Flair. Right. There, he pretty much says it. Richard Flair kind of died after that first year of college, and it was just Ric Flair afterwards, which I think will lead us into some of the stuff down the road that we'll get into later in the show.
Yeah, and I asked that because I know that like Hulkamania and Hulk Hogan started getting big in the AWA before jumping over to Vince, but at that time, a lot of the promotions were starting to be their own thing, right? The AWA had their, they kind of were breaking away. WCCW was kind of breaking away a little bit. Everybody was kind of starting to do their own thing, and then Vince came in, took Hogan, and dominated. But I agree with you. I don't think Hogan's the same. I think WWE had that champion, put the belt on the champ and let him run with it as a babyface thing, whereas everybody else still understood the idea of the money being in the babyface chasing. So I could have seen Flair and Hogan traveling the country together with Hogan chasing Flair. That would have been fun. But I agree with you. I agree. So live chat, my question for you guys is a basic yes or no question. Just based on what Ric Flair did during the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, his time in the NWA, Crockett Promotions, WCW, and WWE, does Ric Flair deserve that spot on Mount Rushmore? And you might be surprised how many people, even knowing what they know, would say no. There's a lot of people that put people above Flair. So it's very interesting. So we've got Chris Hall in the live chat. Welcome to the show, Chris. Eric Porter's here. Legacy 62223. So far, Chris Hall says yes. Legacy said Flair is the GOAT. And I think if we were to stop right now, right, number one, it'd be a very short show. But number two, I think we could make a case, and we could continue on making a case that Flair is one of, if not the greatest of all time, because he had it all. We talked about it. He had the charisma. He had the look. He had the in-ring ability. He could make anybody he got in the ring with look good. So Flair, career-wise at this point, I think he's got it. And our next segment on the show, I want to talk about what I believe was the perfect ending to that. And we've talked about this on the show before, right? WrestleMania 24, Shawn Michaels, I'm sorry, I love you, and the goodbye that should have stayed a goodbye. WrestleMania 24 gave Ric Flair a storybook pro wrestling ending. WWE described that week as a major tribute to Flair, including his 2008 Hall of Fame induction and his match with Shawn Michaels. And, of course, you had the night after on Raw where everybody came out. The only guy that came out off camera was Undertaker, but there is video of it. You can find it on YouTube. Ric Flair's match with Shawn Michaels is one of the most emotional retirement matches in all of pro wrestling. The match itself was great, but the emotion is what people remember. Shawn Michaels saying that, I'm sorry, I love you, and then ending Flair's career. That was, to me, wrestling poetry. So this is an easy question, I think, but I think it's one we need to ask. Should Ric Flair have stayed retired after that? And it's hard, I think, for a lot of us. I think let's look at this realistically, because one of the things we're going to get into are a lot of Ric Flair's alleged money problems and issues where he gets out of retirement because he needs the payday. And it's hard, I think, for a lot of us who've been through financial struggles to go, oh, I should have stayed retired. I'm staying retired. I'm not taking any deal whatsoever. So I want to look at this from a realistic perspective. So I think from a fan standpoint, I think it's an easy answer. But I want to get your thoughts. Doc, should Ric Flair have stayed retired after WrestleMania 24?
100%. We've said it before. Perfect ending to a career. Perfect story. I mean, what's the meme? Peak cinema.
Right.
Absolutely. Peak pro wrestling. Find me a more emotional match. I dare you. Find me a match that tugs at your heartstrings like that one. Cody and finishing the story, no.
No.
The boyhood dream of Shawn Michaels, no. Even Hulk Hogan beating the Iron Sheik, the birth of Hulkamania, no. That is peak pro wrestling. You want a match to even come close to that. You're going to be hard pressed to find it. You're going to be hard pressed to write a more perfect story. I mean, good grief. I remember watching that live, and it's Flair's last match, but still, you're so invested into it. You're like, come on, Rick, you can do it. You got to win.
Right.
Yeah, so good.
Benny, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
I 1,000,000% agree with everything Doc just said, and I shed a tear or two like that night with the match with Shawn Michaels. But then again, I believe it was on Monday Night Raw when they had that goodbye where everybody came out and gave their goodbyes, including the Four Horsemen. I'm sitting there bawling like a little kid. It was just that emotional. I mean, thinking like that is the greatest ending to any career I've ever seen, bar none. And if it had ended there, oh my God, perfect storybook ending. But Ric Flair, I believe, had gotten divorced to his third wife, Beth, I think 3 years earlier. And I'm pretty sure he mentioned he was paying her $15,000 a month in child support, or in alimony rather, maybe child support as well. But I think with his other two wives, he was paying as well. You figure you're paying out $250,000 in alimony and child support, and there's no money coming in. And I don't think Ric Flair actually set aside money for a rainy day.
No.
He lived every day as if it was his last. I don't think he had any choice but to wrestle.
Yeah, I agree. So there's an interesting thing here because we're kind of coming at this from a fan's perspective because that's what we are. And so one of the questions I have is as a fan, do you think that fans have the right to feel cheated when someone returns after a goodbye like that? For example, like Ric Flair has the perfect send-off, and then he goes and starts wrestling in TNA. You had Shawn Michaels, who had a great send-off at WrestleMania 26 just 2 years later. Then he goes and performs in Saudi. Does the fans' feelings about this matter? I guess is a good way of putting it. Benny, what do you think?
Absolutely not. What's that term in economics? Caveat emptor, let the buyer beware.
Right.
That last fiasco he had, 3 or 4 years ago in Tennessee, when he wrestled with his son-in-law. Anybody who paid to watch that, I don't feel sorry for them. I mean, they got, what do you expect? You have a 73-year-old man with a drinking problem, and guess what? He shows up intoxicated and he passes out a couple of times during the match. To me, like that, maybe that was worth the money just to watch that happen. But no, I mean, we have to do our due diligence and be realistic. Even as wrestling fans, you're getting, that's one of the things I wanted to say before was when Flair wrestled Shawn Michaels, he was 59 years old, but he still, I mean, he could still do it.
Yeah.
He was still a decent performer. I think he could have, I mean, if WWE hadn't terminated his career, I think he could have went on for 2 or 3 more years. But, by the time he got to be in his 70s and, another decade of drinking and partying, no, I mean, we have a right to feel any way we want, but
right.
Legitimately, if you go to see Ric Flair wrestle and he shows up drunk, you kind of like that. That was one of the things that you had to take into account when you bought the ticket.
Yeah. You have the right, if you bought a ticket and it sucked, you have the right to kind of complain, but I think you kind of knew what you were in for
right.
with that one. But, it's the thing about entertainment, a lot of times you want to be heard. The best way to be heard is to stop giving them money. Like, that's literally the best way to be heard. It's not loud chants. It's not booing your good guy or cheering your bad guy, because as long as you're giving them your money, that's all that really matters to them, because it's a business, right? Doc, how about you? What do you think? Do you think that fans have the right to feel cheated if someone returns after that kind of thing? But maybe we can look at it from the perspective of the people that aren't supporting it, that aren't watching these things. Like I never watched one match of Ric Flair's after WrestleMania 24. I still to this day haven't. I've seen bits and pieces because of social media, but I never supported any of it. So what do you think about from that perspective?
I'm in that same boat. Once Ric Flair retired, I heard he came back to TNA. I'm not going to watch that.
Right.
His AEW last match, I'm not going to watch that. I have no desire. Do I have a right to feel cheated? No, and I don't feel cheated because that last match was great. I still have great memories of it. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to watch these because I know what I'm going to get.
Right.
Now, do I feel cheated with the Star Wars sequels? Absolutely, because I went into them and I didn't know what I was going to get. And I was like, oh, man, I paid money for this? This is awful.
Right.
And so my headcanon is the expanded universe. But Ric Flair, you knew what you were going to get. That was supposed to be the ending. Let it be the ending.
Yeah, I agree. Live chat. Guys, I want to hear from you. Was WrestleMania 24 the best possible ending from Ric Flair? Why don't you guys give it a grade here? in the live chat. What did you think of that ending, WrestleMania 24 versus Shawn Michaels, as far as being a last match? Was that perfection at an A? Where do you guys grade it? Let me know in the live chat here as we continue on with the next segment of the show, which is getting into the TNA years and the first major legacy crack. Ric Flair appeared in TNA in 2010 after his WWE retirement. Bleacher Report noted that Flair made a surprise appearance for TNA on its first show of 2010 and quickly became part of the company's push during that Hogan era of TNA. This is where the legacy conversation, in my opinion, starts to shift. It wasn't just Ric Flair went to TNA. You know, wrestlers change companies all the time. The issue was that Flair had just given him one of the most beautiful retirements ever. And then not long after, he's back on TV somewhere else. Now, again, that's not really the biggest issue here. It was that he got back in the ring. He started performing again, basically nullifying the retirement, right? And Ric Flair has publicly said that he went to TNA because he needed the money. All right, Sportskeeda reported Flair's quote that he needed money because of alimony, lawyers, and IRS issues like we discussed. So by Flair's own public explanation, money was the major factor in going to TNA. Now that's not wrong of him. You can't really blame him for that. And a lot of people have financial problems, but it did change in that time how fans viewed the retirement and all that stuff. Did his jump to TNA, or let me just ask this a different way, how did Flair's jump to TNA resonate with you? Doc, let's start with you. How did that jump over there resonate with you?
Well, again, I wasn't going to watch it because the guy's retired. I wasn't watching a lot of TNA in the first place, and that wasn't a draw for me. That wasn't going to make me tune into TNA and watch, you know, an old man do his thing. I definitely have seen some clips online, like you talked about, his little woo fest on the entrance ramp.
Right.
I mean, that's funny, but I haven't watched any clips of his matches, and I don't want to.
Right.
But I think the financial issues are a little bit of an excuse. I just think he couldn't stand not being Ric Flair. Shawn Michaels said it in the 30 for 30. Ric Flair loves being Ric Flair, but he does not love Richard Fleer, and he never got to know who that guy is.
Right.
And so he's sitting at home stewing, not being able to be Ric Flair. And I think any offer that came through, whether he was sitting on a fat pile of Uncle Scrooge money or not, he was going to take that opportunity to be Ric Flair in front of the cameras, in front of the fans.
All right. Eric Porter in the live chat saying Ric Flair did the right thing by being an elder statesman and put younger guys over. Mick Foley came out of retirement too. And Mick Foley's a whole nother subject. Mick Foley right now is talking about doing a last match. How many of you really want to see Mick Foley in the state physically and mentally that he's in go into a last match? I like Mick Foley. I like what he did for the business. But do we really want him to put himself through that just for the sake of having a last match? Because he, for whatever reason, feels like he needs to have it. For me, Foley's last match for me, even though he had some after, was him and Edge. Like that was my, like, that's the last Foley match I want to watch. All right, but this isn't a Mick Foley show, right? I'm not comparing Ric Flair coming out of retirement to anybody else because a lot of wrestlers do it. The difference is between Flair and everybody else was very few people got to have that send-off, right? And we've seen more of it recently. And so maybe some people today think that that's the way it's done in pro wrestling. But it wasn't always done that way. You wrestled till you couldn't wrestle anymore, and then you wrestled some more. That's always been how it is. There's a lot of guys from the 80s that are, and maybe 70s, that are still wrestling out there on independent shows. So the difference is that Flair had a huge send-off and a huge retirement and was acknowledged for all of it, was treated like royalty. And when he left, it was like he took all of that and made it null and void. And yes, Flair came out of retirement for the Hulkamania tour, which was a disaster, and that kind of thing. So again, it's like, it's hard to say why, other than just the need to be, like Doc said, the need to be Ric Flair instead of Richard Fleer. Of course, the money, because there's the lifestyle, and Flair definitely lives the gimmick. But Benny, I want to talk to you about this as well. I want to get your thoughts on it. What were your impressions then, and what are your impressions now about Flair going to TNA after that retirement?
Well, I was never a fan of TNA anyway, but the minute I saw him, it's like, what the hell are you doing there? You had your retirement. Now you're what, 61 years old? Come on, give it up. It's time. Him being there is holding somebody else back. Now, if they had brought him in as, say, like an authority figure,
right,
or a broadcaster, an announcer, or even like a heel manager of a faction who occasionally took a bump, I probably could have lived with that. But both you, Pat, and Doc both had great points that Ric Flair, Glenn Jacobs, and Kane are two different people.
Right.
Mark Calloway and The Undertaker are two different people. But Ric Flair and Richard Fleer, there's no discernible difference. They are the same person. And I think, number one, yeah, I'm sure he needed the money. He absolutely needed the money. But he needed the money to both, fund everything that you guys mentioned, the IRS, the lawyers, the alimony. But he also needed the money to stay being Ric Flair.
Yep. So one of the points made in the live chat was that Flair put over young guys. And one of my big things is, in the wrestling business, getting young guys over doesn't always mean getting in the ring, taking a pinfall, something like that. If a guy like Ric Flair, with his charisma and his talent on the mic, I mean, he got Jay Lethal over with a viral video of wooing. We all know, like, there are people that have no clue who Jay Lethal is, apart from the fact that he had a woo-off with Ric Flair. That's something to go off of right there. Ric Flair, I think, could have gone to TNA without damaging the pro wrestler retirement side, the matches, and could have contributed to a smaller rising company, potentially rising company, in TNA by, like Benny said, he could have been an authority figure. He could have managed young, up-and-coming talent, right? That could have been a thing. But the problem with TNA for many years was always that the young and up-and-coming guys were always second tier to all of the established stars that they were bringing in a very, WCW like way, but on a whole nother scale. It was like they had to make room for Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and maybe rightfully Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle was a stud in TNA, but he was also kind of drugged up stud in TNA. Sting, Hulk Hogan, anybody that had clout in WWE or the history of pro wrestling, they came in and immediately got a top spot over the young guys. And if you want to establish those top guys, let Flair be the antithesis of that. Let Flair come in and elevate them and say, look, I'm not here to take their spot. I'm here to help them get their spot. Imagine how powerful that would have been. And it would have shown Flair, I think, in a better light. It would have shown that would have shown Flair as being unselfish, trying to get other guys over. But everything that happened, he got in the ring to do it. He was paid to do it, and it just didn't work. Hey, stop tearing down Ric Flair. Kevin Abreu. Well, sir, we first lifted up Ric Flair, and now we're being honest about what we feel happened after the fact. But the whole purpose, if you joined us here, the whole thing the question we're asking is Ric Flair ruining the legacy of Ric Flair? And if you think Ric Flair is still one of the greatest of all time, that's great. We're not here to really change your mind. We're here to just answer that one question. And in the live chat here, and Kevin Abreu, since you're here, answer this. Would you have taken the offer from TNA and gotten back in the ring if you were Ric Flair? And be honest. Would you have taken that offer and gotten in the ring if you were Ric Flair? And as you guys are pondering that question, I want to head on to our next segment. And we've talked about it a little bit. The character becoming the man. And the man becoming the character, the gimmick, where the lines disappear. It's one of our main themes here on this show. Ric Flair, the character, was rich. He was loud. He was flashy. He was partying all the time, womanizing, bragging, drinking, spending, styling, profiling, limousine riding, jet flying. The problem is, over time, it feels like the character and the real man became impossible to separate. Were the robes and jets cool? Were they legendary? Darn right they were. But all of that became part of the myth. The limousine ride and jet flying lifestyle sounded cool on television. But as you grow up, as you become an adult, as you mature, you need to start putting away those childish things. You're supposed to grow out of that and understand that life's not just about partying and womanizing and all this stuff. It's about deeper things than that. And then when financial issues hit, when real life hits, you have finances, public blow-ups, drinking, personal struggles. Now that myth that we've established starts to feel tragic. Because when you're 20 and you're limousine riding, jet flying, you're like, dude, that's freaking cool. I want to be like that guy. When you're 60, you're kind of like, and you know all the things that are going on around him, you're kind of like, yeah, no. Knock it off, dude. Like, how many times have you seen a Ric Flair story pop up and you went, dude, just stop? Right? Like, you're begging Flair. I've seen tweets where I'm just like, dude, like, just get offline. Enough. You capitalize every word, the first letter of every word. We get it. Stop. So, I think this is a very important question here. Benny, since you're on the screen, let's start with you. I'm not taking away any blame from the individual, right? Because we all make our own decisions in life. We all make our own choices. However, did the business, did the fans, did everything around Ric Flair help create this problem by supporting that lifestyle for so long?
Absolutely, 100%. Because And keep in mind, in 1975, I believe it was, Ric Flair was in a very bad plane crash
Yes.
with Johnny Valentine, I think another wrestler named Bob Bruggers, and David Crockett. I believe the pilot was killed. Valentine couldn't wrestle anymore. I think the same thing with Bruggers. And I think Tim Woods, Mr. Wrestling, was in that as well. Flair had a broken back and was told he could never wrestle again. And I believe he was only 2 years in the business, or maybe three. But when he broke in the AWA in 1973, he was close to 300 pounds,
Right.
with short hair. He was a completely different character. I believe he slimmed down after the plane crash,
Yes.
and refined his style. And I believe the Nature Boy character kind of morphed out of his transformation of, now with the bleach blonde hair and the slimmer physique. And you gotta remember something now. You're traveling, every night. It's like being a rock star. You're in Charlotte, North Carolina one night. The next night you're in Savannah, Georgia. You're in, I don't know, Kentucky, and everywhere you go, you're getting, in all likelihood, I believe they got paid cash every night. You got like a pocket full of money. You have women, literally throwing themselves at you, and you get to do it again the next night. Every night's a party. You wrestle for an hour. Maybe you work out for an hour, but otherwise you're traveling to the next town to do the same thing. I'm surprised that more wrestlers, and a lot of them did fall into the same trap, not to the same magnitude as Ric Flair with all the divorces and everything and all the financial problems, but a lot of wrestlers kind of fell into the women, the drugs, the partying and things like that. We just talk more about it with Ric Flair because it happens so much more often with him.
Right. And I agree with the live chat here. It is a yes and no thing. Everything taken into consideration, there's a lot of struggle there. And Doc, I want to bring you into this one too, but in a different way. Since you were a part of independent wrestling promotion and everything, but today's wrestling is a much different product. Back in when Flair was coming up, and Flair began, he was more of like a power lifter. He was lifting with Ken Patera and stuff. When you come up with Ken Patera, that's a lot to keep up with. He's essentially at that time, wasn't he like the world's strongest man or something like that?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. So that's a lot to keep up with, and Flair was a power lifter then. But kayfabe was the rule. It wasn't like you made a choice to stay in character. You either stayed in character or you were out of a job. Now, that doesn't mean that as time went on and things changed, you couldn't start to separate that. But it does create an issue with the past performers, because you see Hulk Hogan became Hulk Hogan. Ric Flair became Ric Flair. The Ultimate Warrior literally changed his name to Warrior. Bret Hart is Bret the Hitman Hart. All right. I don't think we can separate that from when we tell the story. So, Doc, talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on how kayfabe affected all of this as well, and having to maintain that appearance everywhere you went, and how the guys today will fare in that regard. Like, do they have it easier today than Flair did, or what do you think?
I think they definitely have it easier than Flair did, but at the same time, there's an appeal to being this character you create 24/7. I enjoy being Doc Haywood. Being Doc Haywood is a lot of fun. You go out and call people plebs and say you smell like food stamps. It's a blast. You're this cartoon character, this idealized version of who you want to be. Who wouldn't want to be Ric Flair? If you don't have like a grounded spiritual background or something like that, you would want to be a limousine riding, jet flying, wheeling dealing son of a gun with 25 women waiting at the hotel for you. that's what society would tell you that being a man is. That's something guys reach for. Why wouldn't you want to be that 24/7?
Right.
So I think to a degree there's an appeal in being, a Hulk Hogan 24/7, 300 days out of the year. And why these guys had such a hard time going home when they were not on the road and being a family man and enjoying their wife and enjoying their children. Why infidelity was so rampant among wrestlers on the road. uh, I think to a degree I'm fortunate that my secret identity, my shoot persona, I had, you know 40 years of developing that guy and being that guy before I became Dr. Haywood. And the gimmick is more an extension of that guy, maybe with the dial turned to evil, depending on what's going on if Zach Reeves in the room. But
he smells like food stamps.
He he does. He smells like food stamps. So I'm fortunate in that I can take off the diamond jacket and the diamond sunglasses and spend time with Lady Haywood and Little Haywood and Dr. Haywood, and be the family guy and enjoy my time with my family and be able to step away from pro wrestling when I need to, because pro wrestling will take everything from you. We've seen it before. Promoters will take everything from you. Ric Flair continuing to work after that retirement match is as much on the promoters because they smell money. And they want to make money off of Ric's back, off of Ric's name, off of Ric's legacy. And any promoter, if he smells money, will do that with you and take and take and take and take. And you've got to have a deep well to continue giving to the business. And eventually you're going to get inverted if you allow it to take too much. And I think that's what's happened with Ric, is it's just sucked everything out of him and turned him inside out.
Right. And like I said at the beginning of the show, this is not about us coming in to bash Ric Flair. This is not what the point of the show at all. I want to look at this from a very honest perspective and look at this from several different angles, because this isn't just a straight up yes or no answer. This is a much deeper issue that is very pertinent to pro wrestling. All right? Because a lot of these guys and a lot of us, maybe we're not comfortable as who we are. And we create personas, and that persona becomes something that we're way more confident being. Now, I've tried not to make positively Pat Sims a persona. I've tried to make sure that that's just letting people know that that is me. That's what positively Pat Sims means. It means that I am me. At all times, you're getting me. Adam Kish, love you too, bro. Thank you very much. I don't get that very often in the live chat. Love you too. And hello from Ireland from Daniel Moosen. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But that's amazing. I love the fact that my people reaching out in the live chat. If you can't tell, I'm Scotch-Irish. If you can't tell by my skin complexion and what's left of the red hair in my beard here, I am full-on ginger. The difference between a pro wrestler and an actor in Hollywood is an actor in Hollywood goes and plays a character for weeks or months and then gets to go home and stops being that character, right? Keanu Reeves can go play Neo, and then he can go home and be perfectly happy that he's not in the Matrix. He's not the chosen one. He doesn't have a bunch of special powers. He can just go home and be Keanu Reeves. Ric Flair can't do that, or couldn't do that. Ric Flair had to be Ric Flair. But the thing is you have to be able to let go of that character when you're in private. And that was where it didn't happen. Flair kept being Ric Flair. So I do have, there's a lot of sympathy that I have for a lot of these old school wrestlers. You know, we went to a wrestling convention a few years ago, and a lot of these guys are still those characters. Greg the Hammer Valentine is still Greg the Hammer Valentine. Brutus the Barber Beefcake is still Brutus the Barber Beefcake. You'll notice he's not the Zodiac or the Booty Man. He's Brutus the Barber Beefcake, right? And there's a part of me that feels really bad for these guys because I feel like that's where they're comfortable. That's where they feel confident, and I understand that. I was talking with somebody, with Chris on last night's Warriors Unleashed, and I said, look, when I'm super confident is when I'm getting tattooed. I feel so confident when that needle hits that skin, and I'm like, here we go. I'm gonna look amazing. This is gonna be awesome. When we got done with my chest, when we got done with my back, I'm ready to conquer the world, right? And so, you know, this year I want to get more done and everything, and it's a lot of that is because it's personal to me, and it makes me feel confident. And I can just imagine how you're a character constantly over and over every day for years and years and years, and then you're supposed to just turn it off. It's incredibly difficult. Incredibly difficult. However, it's not an excuse to make bad decisions. It's not an excuse to be a bad person. And why does Adam hate Daniel? We don't hate on this show. What is this? What is this in the live chat? Adam Kish, we don't hate. We love Daniel Mooson for being here. We love you for being here. We don't hate anybody. We don't hate people here. There's no hate. This ain't the player haters ball. We don't do that here. All right. But I want to get to some serious issues here. There were a lot of allegations. We had the plane ride from hell that got a very detailed and controversial episode on Dark Side of the Ring. And we had public backlash. And what we're going to talk about here is this is how old stories returned and changed modern perception. And this is something that access to information and constant you have the ability to watch whatever you want whenever you want to watch it now. We're constantly bombarded with information and entertainment and all kinds of things. And so things are going to come up. Things are going to be brought back up. And in 2021, Vice's Dark Side of the Ring revisited the infamous 2002 plane ride from hell. Newsweek reported that Flair was among the wrestlers accused of inappropriate behavior during that flight, and that he later issued a public response saying he had never run from past behaviors. What in the world does that mean? Benny, it wasn't really an apology. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't really even an acknowledgement that he even did anything wrong. What kind of a response is that? I never run from past behaviors.
That's a very political answer, I think. Doesn't really say anything.
Right. It just didn't make sense to me. Like, I always think, does Flair have a PR team? And if he does, they need to be fired.
Right.
So now here, I want to say this again really quickly, guys. We are not here to retry Ric Flair. We're not here to retry allegations on a YouTube show. We're not judge, jury, and executioner. We are not claiming to know everything that happened. We are discussing right now how the resurfacing of those allegations affected Ric Flair's public image. All right, the documentary, the episode of Dark Side of the Ring doesn't show footage of Flair doing anything that he's accused of doing. They're accusations made by people on the flight. And Adam Kish says, I'm 100 years old. Are you really? Adam Kish, are you really 100 years old? That would be amazing.
Adam's living the gimmick, baby.
Yeah. Ric Flair in WCW versus NWO World Heavyweight Championship. 1-on-1, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3, and 4 versus 4. I am so confused with our live chat today. I'm having fun, but I'm so lost. All right. So with that being said, right, you can't say that the Dark Side of the Ring episode did not have an effect on how people perceived Ric Flair after it aired. For a long time, wrestling fans heard wild Ric Flair stories, and I think a lot of us laughed him off. I think a lot of us thought it was pro wrestling. It was more like Hulk Hogan. How many of you believe anything Hulk Hogan says anymore? Right? How many of you actually believed half the stuff Ric Flair said he did? Or how many of the half the stuff that people claim Ric Flair did? Like, the only stories I hope are true are the ones of Haku. That's the only ones that I hope are true. Because I love those.
Biting somebody's nose off.
Yeah, I love the stories of Haku.
Yeah.
I want that to be true. But the culture has changed. It's a different time. People started asking, were these just harmless party stories, or were there signs of deeper problems? So, Benny, did Dark Side of the Ring change how a lot of the younger generation viewed Ric Flair, in your opinion?
I don't know. Dark Side of the Ring. I just think the social media and everything that's come out about him over the years. And it's funny because Ric Flair is actually a very polarizing figure these days, because you have many people that no matter what he's done, they will take up for him, and he gets a free pass. If he stiffs somebody on Cameo, whatever, passes out at a bar, gets thrown out. Well, he's Ric Flair. He's allowed to do that. And, so in some respects, he makes out on the deal. He's got this legion of fans who pretty much, are amused by everything he does. And then, in my case, I think he's a fool, but, it's his life to lead as he wants. But I just think, not just Dark Side of the Ring. That definitely highlighted things. I just think that because of social media, you got to remember something. When Ric Flair was living the lifestyle in 1985, and he'd go from town to town and meet up with girls at the bar. There were no cameras there.
Nope.
Nobody had cell phones.
Nope.
We now are what I call sports entertainment critics.
Yep.
But back then, we were professional wrestling fans.
Yeah.
Somebody was just happy to meet Ric Flair. And now, every wrestler is in a goldfish bowl. Their entire lives are chronicled and documented. Ric Flair he had privacy back then to do whatever he wanted.
Yeah, that's a good point. Doc, let me ask you this. Should older wrestling stories and things that happened in the past, should they be judged by today's standards? I think it's kind of a loaded question.
I don't think so. I don't think the past should be judged by today's standards in any case, but there is universal things that are wrong. Assaulting a person, whether it happened 20 years ago or yesterday, is wrong. Exposing yourself to a lady, whether it happened 40 years ago or 10 minutes ago, is wrong. I think we'll kind of excuse things as boys will be boys, but Ric Flair, they alleged he exposed himself to a stewardess on the plane ride from hell. I was just to kind of bone up. I rewatched the ESPN 30 for 30, and one of the Road Warriors was talking about how there was a WCW flight, and he exposed himself to Sting, saying, "Hey, Sting, can you handle this?" And opens up the robe, and it's just the Nature Boy in nature. And it's like a story that makes us giggle because that's ridiculous, but at the same time, anybody but Ric Flair does that, you're going to be arrested. You're going to be on a list for the rest of your life. You're not going to be around to go around playgrounds or anything like that.
Right.
So there's it's almost a two-tier justice system where celebrities and I put pro wrestling personalities in that who are big names can get away with stuff that the average Joe that you and I could not get away with.
Right.
And would not be excused for. And I think what's happening is because of social media and the 24-hour news cycle, those levels are equalizing now, and celebrities cannot get away with the stuff that they used to get away with. The elites cannot get away with the stuff that they used to get away with. We talk about Epstein Island and stuff, and we think that this is probably an isolated incident when this kind of stuff's probably been going on for hundreds of years, where
Right.
people who have money and power have been doing things that the average person would find absolutely disgusting and repugnant. So I think rather than judging the past by today's standards, I think just we're not letting stuff slide anymore because it's going on in a world that has eyes everywhere.
Right. I mean, it kind of
can't hide in the shadows.
It kind of reminds you of the saying, "Ignorance is bliss," right?
Like, for sure.
The less we knew about these guys, the better. Like,
yeah.
How many of you guys like baseball, right? Baseball, the American pastimes, my favorite sport, my favorite competitive sport. And during the late 90s, the mid to late 90s, there was a shift that happened where guys were, it started in the 80s, but it really took hold during 1998 when Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa went on their legendary home run battle to break Roger Maris's record. Just a few years later, Barry Bonds does it. Baseball players are starting to look like pro wrestlers, and steroids became a huge deal. But guess what? The majority of every baseball fan in the world turned their head until it became a problem. Until it got pushed in our face. We knew what was going on, but we all went, "I'm enjoying baseball, leave it alone." But then as soon as it got put in our faces, we had all of a sudden people were, "Oh, this is horrible. We need to clean up America's pastime. We need to clean up the game." And people, you can't tell me people didn't know what was going on, but I'm sure there were people that didn't know. People hated Barry Bonds, but that was my boy. I actually like me or hate me, I liked Barry Bonds. Before that, I thought he was a first ballot Hall of Famer before all that stuff happened. But in pro wrestling, secrecy was a big deal. And, now it's just we're finding out so many things. And that's why I actually don't like the Dark Side of the Ring show. I'm not a fan of it. I'm really not. It's, a lot of it's just, and I don't mind things coming out. Things are going to come out no matter what. But just it seems like that's the whole goal of the show is to just throw everybody under the bus. And, so anyway, Mike G is me. Welcome to the show, Mike. McGwire was my favorite player starting in 1987. Hearing him admit he used steroids hurt. Finding out your heroes are not exactly heroes is tough. You know, without Hulk Hogan, I might not be a pro wrestling fan. Hulk Hogan was the man when I was growing up. I was that perfect age to be a Hulkamaniac. Perfect age. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I grew up with Hulk Hogan. You know how devastating it was when Hulk Hogan started ruining Hulk Hogan's legacy? Oh, that was hard for me to swallow. Really hard for me to swallow. So for the live chat, my question to you guys is simply this. Are you able, and is it even possible, to separate Ric Flair, the performer, from Ric Flair, the person? At this point, can you separate the two? And it brings us into, we've already discussed a little bit of this, but hold on, I got to find the right mouse to use here. And that is the public incidents, the social media, the embarrassment factor. I feel like every other day, if you follow Ric Flair on X, which is the main place he goes and vents and does his thing, you're just embarrassed for the guy. You feel like there's no control there. No one's sitting there over his shoulder going, you know, Rick, bashing your son on X right now, probably not a good look. Right? Or calling out WWE for something that ended up being very ridiculous to call out WWE on in terms of the clothing line. Like Ric Flair forgot that, WWE now has a contract with this clothing line. The clothing line is saying, we can't have you be a part of it anymore because you work for a rival company. That's business, dude. All businesses operate that way. It's the same reason you're not in a WWE video game anymore. But he goes out there and does that kind of thing. Maverick. Dude, Maverick from Top Gun is here. Welcome, Maverick from Top Gun. It says Ric Flair is a maniac. It's a very good word to put it there. Adam Kish. We could just do a whole show on Adam Kish, by the way. If you guys are following the live chat. Dude, I love you, but what's your name, special guest? So our special guest is Doc Haywood and Benny Scala. What do you mean baseball? 67 was just thrown out there. Hell yeah, Adam Kish, dude, you're awesome. Keep chatting. Keep chatting in the live chat. I want to see what else you have to say. Flair, the character, is not Flair. The latter needs support, love, and help. The character is a legend. Goose could not make it, sadly. No, I kind of figured Goose wouldn't be here. Maverick, thank you for that. Oh man, even in the most serious of times, there's always fun to be had on this show. Thank you guys so much for being a part of it. I'm waiting for Seth to pop in because I want to. Don't forget, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, get in that live chat and get some super chats. I don't care. Get the cheapest ones they have. Get us to 10 so that the one and only right here, Doc Haywood, will lead us in singing happy birthday to my son, Seth Sims. I think Ric Flair can't come to terms with the fact that he can't be Ric Flair, the performer, anymore. He doesn't seem to have a self-identity outside of the character. That's very true. I think it's very true. You know, and it's how old is Ric Flair? I have no idea. Too old to be doing what he's doing. He's how old?
77.
77. Wow. He's up there. He's one of those, I think he's kind of like the Keith Richards of pro wrestling, where you're like, how? You see, like, and I'm trying to say this the right way, because a lot of pro wrestlers over the years have passed. We've watched pro wrestlers that we thought he looks healthy, he looks real, just gone. Ric Flair is one of those where he's the freaking Energizer Bunny of pro wrestling. He just keeps going and going. When you're like, of anybody, with the lifestyle that he led, you think Flair. But apparently, he and Keith have found the magic pill, the magic formula, man.
Secret sauce.
Yeah, but Ric Flair has had several public controversies in recent years, including a 2024 verbal altercation at a Gainesville restaurant that went viral after he posted about being disrespected, and the video then circulated online. So basically he came out and he said, I was disrespected at this restaurant, and the restaurant went, nuh-uh, and showed that it was just the opposite. There was also a recent one here in 2026 that I just mentioned, a public dispute involving Ric Flair and his son David over the use of the Flair name, with Flair later discussing health issues after the public outburst. So it's kind of like when Roseanne Barr made her statement and got fired from Roseanne and said, well, I took medication. That's what this felt like here, where Ric Flair called out David Flair and then said, I'm not feeling well. Like, dude, no. I think most of us know better at this point. Adam Kish wants to know what year it is. So it's 2026. Thank you very much.
Adam Kish is a time traveler.
Yeah. Warrior, JWR. I'm guessing that's supposed to be Rick, because it says Dick is becoming Spartacus. So I think Rick is becoming Spartacus. Disney is keeping Flair alive with animatronics. That's a good one. Ted Turner is better than Vince McMahon. And 24/07/365. Oh, you mean 24/7/365, past, present, and future. Well, I think it depends on what you're talking about. I mean, Ted Turner was probably a much better businessman than Vince McMahon, even though he ended up losing control over his own company. But yeah, I don't think you could say that Ted Turner was a better pro wrestling guy than Vince McMahon. Ted Turner owned a company, and then he put a bunch of incompetent people to run it. Eric Bischoff was the only guy that ever had any real success with it. But, yeah, Ted Turner's better than Vince in certain things, but Vince is definitely the better pro wrestling guy than Ted Turner was. This is where a lot of fans, though, when we talk about Ric Flair, get more sad than angry. They see Ric Flair online, or they see a viral video, instead of thinking, there's the greatest world champion of all time, they're thinking, man, I wish someone would take his phone away. So here's some of the things. Eric Bischoff should buy WWE. Get out of here. Get off my chat. You're banned. You're banned, sir. Don't do that to Ireland. Eric Bischoff should not buy WWE. He should not dismantle. No. Stop it. Stop it. Let's get back into this here. Here's some things that are problems right now for Ric Flair. Social media. Flair needs to get off social media. Public rants. Putting all of the drama, all the issues out there for the world to see. Restaurants. Just having a laugh. I know. That's why we're laughing as we're saying it here. Online feuds. Family disputes. His health concerns. Fans not knowing what they're supposed to feel in all of this. Are we supposed to laugh? Are we supposed to criticize it? Are we supposed to feel bad? Are we supposed to feel angry? I mean, this guy went after Shawn Michaels at one point, and then he turns around. Oh, I love Shawn Michaels. He'll go after Triple H. I love Triple H. When are we going to maybe think Flair, like, somebody's needs to step up and get that man help? I'm being serious. Doc, talk to me a little bit about what you think when you see these things happening with Ric Flair. What goes through your mind?
Again, you giggle at the character at times, but then you feel bad for the man. I mean, in my opinion, uh, Rick's dealing with some mental health issues.
Right.
May have always been dealing with mental health issues. Uh, I feel bad for his kids, David and Ashley. I feel bad for Rick because he lost Reed, um, and never really got to know these kids when they were kids because he was on the road. His kids have said on the ESPN 30 for 30 he was not home. He preferred to be on the road. He preferred to be Ric Flair, and instead of spending time with his kids, one of his daughters said he would just come home with 30 Cabbage Patch Kids, and it was he would give me gifts instead of time. Uh, so you do feel bad for the guy, and I think social media is contributing to the mental health decline of Ric Flair. But it's not just Ric Flair. I think we see social media being a problem for a lot of celebrities, a
Right.
lot of wrestlers, a lot of people in our own families. Uh, where it's just like, man, I did not need to know your opinion on every political figure, on every movie, on everything going on with everything. Uh, we constantly break kayfabe in our own lives, where maybe this is just something that should have stayed between me and Lady Haywood. This is something that should have just stayed in conversation at your dinner table. Uh, Ric Flair going off on Becky Lynch for saying she's the man, uh, kind of was the start of this social media snowball for Ric Flair, and it's all downhill from there. Uh, doing the drunk, uh, what do you call them?
Cameo.
Yeah, the drunk cameos where he's talking about how awful marriage is. Of course, marriage was awful for you, Rick. You never gave it an honest shot. You were unfaithful for every single one of your wives.
Right. Benny, how about you? What do you think? Has social media damaged Ric Flair more than any of this other stuff? And, or just the fact that he's putting this out there. Other people are putting this out there. This age of information, is that hurting Ric Flair even more than he did?
Well, I got to point out a couple of segments ago when Doc was talking about the helicopter incident, he used the term bone. And I don't know if he did that on purpose or not, but I thought that was pretty good. Um, and then also in 2026, ignorance is no longer bliss.
Right.
Alexa is bliss. Let's be honest here. But no, absolutely. Social media it's exposed Ric Flair for what he really is.
Right.
And this whole thing with the cameos is ridiculous because the cameos could have been Ric Flair's new lease on life.
Yeah.
With all his financial problems, here somebody is handing you gold on a platter. I'm going to give you $500, and all you have to do is, read these notes and wish my sister a happy birthday, or wish my brother who has you tattooed on his arm, promotion on his job. He could have made a king's ransom doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was the greatest. I mean, it was fell right in his lap. And what does he do? He does it like Ric Flair. I mean, I've seen so many incidents where there was one where a son was buying a cameo for his dad. His dad's name was Buff, and he gave Ric Flair $600. And Ric Flair, of course, was inebriated and called the guy Barf instead of Buff. I mean, you can't. I mean, unless Buff has an extraordinary sense of humor,
right?
But I'm sure that the son did not want that. He wanted a legit, Buff. Ric Flair was his hero, or his favorite wrestler at least. The one you were Doc was referring to. Somebody paid $900 as a gift for his brother, for Ric Flair, to wish the brother and the bride a happy wedding. And so Flair's just, I don't really, I'm not that familiar with cameos, but I believe you get notes
Yeah,
when
you
you
do.
get these gigs.
Yep.
And, you're supposed to just, take the notes as, an outline for what you want to say. Well, what does Ric Flair do? He's shit faced in a restaurant. He's reading these notes pretty much word for word until he goes off the script and says, "What do you want to get married for, you mf'er?" She gets 50%, and he said, "Stay her girlfriend," which means, man, you got to be pretty schnocker to say something like that. But now, and Cameo has a no refund policy, and this person couldn't get their money back.
Yep.
Now Flair did address that, and he said that he has a law firm in Boston. And he even gave the name of the law firm. Supposedly, somebody called up the law firm and said, what happened, and they said you're gonna have to get in line. About 100 people that owe Ric Flair money. So what kills me though is people who give Ric Flair a free pass no matter what he does. Where if it was just some other 77-year-old man, they'd make fun of the guy. Like, who is this clown?
Right.
But yet, because it's Ric Flair, oh, it's just Ric Flair. He's the GOAT. But when you really take the entirety of his, and look, the guy was a great wrestler, a great world champion. But I mean, that guy has gone completely off the rails, and social media, all it's done is exposed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we talked about this earlier. Like, what are you expecting from Ric Flair when you pay him that? I mean, and he's one of the most expensive guys on Cameo. I mean, number one, I don't care. Like, I'm not paying that kind of money for Ric Flair, even if he was doing it straight, to just go, hey, happy birthday. Sorry, I'm not paying that kind of money. It's ungodly.
I'll give you another example real quick, Pat, if I can.
Yeah.
When I was doing Dan and Benny in the Ring several years ago, Jim Cornette was doing cameos. And at one point, he was doing them. He did them for a charity. So I don't know what his normal rate was, but I think he was charging $50 to raise money for charity.
Yeah.
And Dan, my co-host or my partner, he bought one of them, and Cornette went on like a 3-minute rant on Dan and Benny in the Ring, how like 2 Italian guys couldn't even crack the charts in Italy.
Right.
I mean, the guy didn't even take a breath, right? He just, but you could tell that he read the notes and he was prepared. He was sober. He was doing it in his house, not at a bar with background noise. I mean, I would be willing to bet he did it in one take.
Yeah.
But it was so great. Now, ironically, because he kind of made fun of us, but put us over at the same time, the next week, we hit number 8 in Ireland, and Cornette was number 11. So, I mean, he put us over. But that's $50, and we got, not only did we get our money's worth, we got entertained, and we got put over. Where Flair is self-serving. Flair's putting that money in his pocket, and he's being Ric Flair. He's saying whatever suits him at the moment. He doesn't really have any regard to who he's addressing this to.
Right. And like you said, like, how do you not know that you're getting yourself into this kind of a predicament? And I'm sure that's what a lot of the lawyers are. They're like, well, what did you want? What did you think was going to happen? Like, yeah, maybe what you wanted was bubbly Ric Flair, was 1980s promo Ric Flair, but this is who Ric Flair is. Right.
Stay in your house with a suit on, like the old Nature Boy, like dressed to the nines, and cut promos all day long. You're gonna be a gazillionaire before you know it.
Yeah, and
you can still be Ric Flair, but be Ric Flair, the '85 world champion. Even like be in one of your rows, wear freaking clothes underneath, for God's sakes. But I mean, what an opportunity that was handed to you that you're pissing away.
Well, the same thing with the conventions, the wrestling conventions. I've heard nothing but bad experiences from people who go to wrestling conventions. And guess what? All you got to do is sit there, sign autographs. People are gonna throw money at you,
right?
And just grin every 2 minutes, right? Because a lot of these guys, they don't strike up a lot of conversations. Bruce the Barber Beefcake, I got his autograph. He didn't say 2 words to me. Except what my name, he wanted to know my name. And that was it.
Right.
We didn't have a conversation. The only guy I knew that I'd seen that really engaged with people was Dallas. but most everybody else was just, I mean, that's really all you need to do. And Flair can't even do that right. He'll leave before people get through the line. So even if you paid ahead of time, you might not even get to meet the guy. You know, it's nothing but horror stories when it comes to Ric Flair.
Shane Douglas on his podcast said that Ric Flair was at a convention in Pittsburgh, I believe, and he up and left because Sting's line was longer than his.
Yeah, and for good reason.
Without any regard to all these people who traveled God knows how many miles to see Ric Flair and paid money to see Ric Flair, but he doesn't care about that.
No. And here's why. And here's what Rick doesn't get. You want to know why Sting's line is longer? Is it because Sting is the bigger name, the bigger star? No. It's because Sting treats people the right way. Sting is professional. You know that when you go to meet Sting, he's going to give you the time of day. He's going to engage with you. He's going to make you feel like you're somebody important in that moment that you have with Sting. When you see guys with long lines, that's why they have long lines. We all have respect for these wrestlers and what they did and what they do. The guys that do really well at these conventions, they give people the time of day. They make them feel important. You know why? Because they should. Because without those people, and that's, again, I don't think Ric Flair gets this. Without the people, there is no Ric Flair. Without fans paying their hard-earned money to see him, there is no Ric Flair. And a lot of these guys get these egos where it's like, no, I'm the reason why. I'm the reason. It's the fans. It's the people that support them. And the ones that get it, they're the ones who are successful after wrestling, right? And yeah, I would never risk getting a cameo from Flair unless I had that kind of money to throw away so that I could have something pathetic to look at. But I would never do that. All right, let's keep moving, guys. We got a few more minutes here. We got our next segment. We're not going to cover this too much because we've already talked about it a little bit. The last match, AEW, fans worrying about Flair. In 2022, Ric Flair had his quote-unquote last match, which drew heavy criticism from fans because of his age, physical limitations, and health concerns. And Cultaholic reported Jeff Jarrett discussing the match and the controversial heart attack spot, while noting Flair was dehydrated and had been drinking the night before. And again, this is all according to Jeff Jarrett's comments. Now, Ric Flair's last match should have been WrestleMania 24. Then it became TNA. Then it became this other last match. Then it became out appearances where fans were not always celebrating him. Sometimes they're worried about him. What were your thoughts, gentlemen? Benny, let's start with you since you're on the screen. What were your thoughts on Ric Flair's last match?
Well, initially, he showed several videos on social media of him training.
Yep.
And he actually looked in pretty decent shape. I mean, for a guy his age, but, I think they did it all wrong. If they had promoted it as a nostalgia match, and maybe had like several guys from his era, maybe Nikita Koloff, who's a little bit younger, but you know what I mean? Like his contemporaries from the late 70s, early 80s, and do like an old timers game at Yankee Stadium,
right?
And push it that way as the nostalgia, because, then the expectations are more realistic. But when you're advertising this as a competitive wrestling match, I mean, how old is Barry Bonds now? 60, I think he's about 64.
Yeah, he's up there.
Yeah. I mean, I want to see Barry Bonds go up to bat against Paul Skeens. If he hits a foul tip, I'd be impressed. You can't I don't care how old you are. There comes a time when your time has passed.
Right.
Ric Flair's time had passed 20, maybe 14 years. WrestleMania, that last WrestleMania with Shawn Michaels, that was a great match. That's and we should be able to remember him like that. And that's sad that we're not going to be able to remember him like that.
Right. Doc, what about you? What do you think? What was your thoughts when you heard about it? Did you see any of it? What did you think?
I had no interest in watching it. Again, that Mania 24 was the perfect ending, and that's how I want to remember Ric Flair going out of the business. And so, as long as I stay away from everything after that, I can keep that memory alive, and I can headcanon that as his last match. I did see the social media buildup. I saw Rick training, and seeing the old guy take those bumps. I was like, wow, man, he's doing it. He's in the gym. He's going for it, especially after, it wasn't too long before, if my memory serves me right, that he was on death's door.
Yeah.
He was in the hospital, and we thought we were going to lose Ric Flair.
Yep.
And so for him to bounce back like that, okay, yeah, impressive. Do I still want to watch that match? Do I want to take that time and watch it? No. Am I impressed with his ability to still get in the ring and take some bumps? Absolutely. But do that, as some people in the live chat have said, do that in the performance center.
Right.
Train up the young guys. Teach these young guys how to cut a promo. Teach these young guys how to tell a story, because a lot of that is lacking in pro wrestling today. But no, he's got to continue to try and be Ric Flair, because he never allowed Richard Flair to become anything other than a college dropout party boy.
Right.
And there's a definite, in my opinion, again, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on YouTube. In my opinion, there's some definite arrested development in this guy who's in his 70s, still trying to live like he's a 20 and 30-year-old.
Right. And when Flair went to AEW, his appearances also drew criticism from fans. And the Sportster reported that Flair said he would walk away from AEW if he was embarrassing the company after reading negative reactions online. And it also didn't do anything for Flair. It didn't do anything good for Flair when he went to AEW. I believe he's still under AEW contract. But it also actually kind of hurt AEW with a segment of the fan base, because it only gave credence to the idea that Tony Khan was just collecting wrestling figures, because Tony had been so outspoken about not wanting guys like Hulk Hogan to be a part of the show, not wanting this or not being associated with this, and calling WWE, I'm trying to think of what he called it, the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. And what does he do? He brings in Ric Flair. It's so contradictory, because you're bringing in a guy who now is nothing but controversy, and several allegations, a lot of proven things that he's doing that are against everything you're saying. So I remember a lot of people stopped watching AEW when Ric Flair showed up, because it felt like just another moment where Tony Khan was like, checked off that box, right? And I would be very, very surprised if WWE ever brought Ric Flair back into the fold.
No, please no.
I mean, think about this for a second. Think of what it took to get Jake the Snake back into the fold. He was essentially banned for life. Dallas will tell you, Jake was essentially banned for life. And he had to make a complete turnaround and prove that he was a better person for the long haul. And Jake has held his end of that deal. Jake has held up and stayed sober and has kept up with what he said he was going to do. And good on Jake for it. So, right now, Rick, to be fair, I think he needs some tough love from the wrestling business. I think wrestling companies would be smart to distance themselves from Rick at this point, and I think Rick needs to get away. I think Rick needs to hire somebody that can oversee him, who can watch over him. He needs somebody that can tell him, like, no, don't do that, or I'll take care of that. You know, Rick should be the guy that hires somebody to run his social media accounts. Rick should never tweet.
I don't think, though, that there's anyone that Rick would respect enough to allow to do that.
Correct.
There's not a family member. There's not a wrestler. There is no one on God's green earth that Rick would respect enough to listen to.
Right.
Every marriage down the tubes. I mean, I thought here in the later years, the last gal he was with, and I don't remember her name, but
Wendy was the last one.
Yeah,
right.
Wendy,
Yep.
who stuck with him through that health scare. I thought maybe that will do it, but no. Charlotte, David, no. Would he listen to Sting? No.
Nope.
I don't. Ricky Steamboat, no. Triple H, no. Shawn Michaels, no. And that's the real tragedy, because those are people who love the man.
Mm-hmm.
We all love Ric Flair. I love Ric Flair.
Yeah.
I want what's best for Ric Flair, but I don't think Ric Flair loves Richard Flair. I mean, Shawn Michaels said that, and that's the real tragedy in all of this. If he could just learn to love the man that he is, then maybe he could do that.
Right. Before we get to our final segment here, there's one other thing, because I think it's important. You got the two of the biggest legends of all time. I think you'd be hard pressed in the modern era to find two bigger stars. I mean, you could make a case for Bruno Sammartino back in the day and some others, but in the modern era, Flair and Hogan were it. And the parallels between those two are incredibly creepy. How these two guys are living these parallel lives. Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, they show us something very uncomfortable. Sometimes nobody changes a legend more than a legend himself. Hogan's legacy was seriously damaged after racist comments became public in 2015. WWE cut ties with him for a while. WWE later reinstated him into the Hall of Fame in 2018 after a 3-year suspension, but Hogan's returns never felt the same. The last public appearance Hogan made for WWE was in Los Angeles, a bad decision on WWE's part of where he showed up at. But they didn't know it was his last. But he was booed out of the building. LA, Southern California, where I'm from here, is a very liberal part of the country. And Hogan was not, I mean, the only guy that seems to have survived the public political stuff is Taker. People love Taker enough to where they'll forgive the fact that he's a right-wing Trump fan, a Trump supporter, right? Taker can kind of get away with that. Hogan, no. That's not going to happen. Hogan's damage was tied heavily into those racist comments. He failed to make a legitimate public apology, and no one really felt like he really took accountability for his actions. And Flair's damage feels a lot more spread out than Hogan's. There's tons of allegations, the partying, the public incidents, the social media, the money issues, repeated attempts to keep performing. Hogan's fall felt like an explosion. It felt like a nuclear bomb went off. Ric Flair feels like, it's hard to explain, but it feels like cancer. If that makes sense. You know, after his retirement, stage 1 kicked in. then stage 2, and Flair's in the stage 4 stage of it, where it's just now it's free falling, right? Hogan's was Flair's was, and now it's snowballed to now everything is just this, like, let's just keep adding on to it. It's like Pee Wee Herman's foil ball. It just keeps getting bigger, bigger. Anybody get that? Anybody see that? Had to throw a little humor into it. So that's just kind of my thing there. I wanted to throw that out there. That was just a thing I wanted to do, because I did feel like the parallels were very similar. And again, it's two of the biggest stars of all time, and definitely of the modern era of professional wrestling. But before we say goodbye here, because we're cutting it really close, like we're right there. We're doing really good, guys. We're staying on topic. That's always a good thing. But I want to get everyone's final verdict. I want to answer the question finally, here and now, both in the live chat and here with my special guests here. Ric Flair gave professional wrestling greatness. That cannot be erased. The matches, the promos, the horsemen, the championships, the emotion, it all happened. But legacy is not just what you did at your peak. Legacy is also how people remember you when the spotlight starts to fade. And that's where Ric Flair's story gets complicated. So the question is the final question of the night. Doc, we'll start with you. Is Ric Flair ruining, or has he ruined, the legacy of Ric Flair?
Well, I think our mutual buddy Chris Hall said it best in the chat. You got to separate the art from the artist. Can I still go enjoy a Mission Impossible movie despite Tom Cruise's involvement with Scientology after everything that came with the Going Clear documentary? Yeah, I could still go enjoy a Mission Impossible movie. Can I still go back and enjoy Ric Flair's work from the 70s, 80s, 90s up until his retirement? Absolutely. Because it is art. So I don't think he's tarnishing his legacy of what he did. What he's doing now is ultimately just affects the man. If it affects your public perception of him, I understand that. But for me, I've got to separate the art from the artist, and I'm not in a place to judge the man. I'm in a place to pray for him and hope the best for him, and hope that he can turn his life around from what the public perception of him is. Same thing with Hogan. I mourned when Hogan died. I'm still a Hulkamaniac.
Yeah, same here.
Despite the foibles the man had. I don't take anything away from his legacy or what he gave to the business, and I can't do that with Ric Flair. Modern pro wrestling is built on the backs of those two guys.
Right. And very, very good points. All of them. There's a lot of stuff there. You know, there's a lot of actors that have been disgraced over the years. Does that mean I can't go watch that movie anymore? Even if it's one of my favorites? Yeah, I remember the whole Mel Gibson thing that went down, and I remember, like, does that mean I can't watch Braveheart anymore? One of the greatest movies ever? I can't watch? No. It's not what that means. And I think as an optimist, I'm a very optimistic person. I like to think the best of people. I also think that someone like me, like, I always hold out hope. Right? As long as someone's still living, I always feel like there's hope that they can be better and do better. And I have that for Ric Flair. I want Ric Flair to be better and do better. I had that. I wanted a moment for Hogan. I wanted a moment for Hogan where things kind of got back to the way they were. You know, when Hogan's music would hit and the fans would erupt, and we felt all that camaraderie and love together for Hulkamania and everything that it meant to us. And when he passed, I think that was part of what made me so upset, was that we didn't get that. And even in death, it became complicated. So, Benny, let's get to you. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Is Ric Flair ruining, or did he ruin the legacy of Ric Flair?
I don't know about the legacy of Ric Flair. I mean, but he's definitely messing with the perception of Ric Flair. I mean, nobody's ever going to take away his 16 world championships. Or you go on YouTube, you can listen to hundreds. I mean, I'm talking hundreds of great Ric Flair promos. I mean, they're very entertaining. They've aged very well, 40 years later. And I can still watch him feud on TV with Magnum TA or Ronnie Garvin. Mm-hmm. It's classic. But the problem is, I think with a lot of the younger fans, they're not going to remember that stuff as much as they remember, the guy who's always getting thrown out of restaurants, and the guy who's cutting these ridiculous, cameo promos and stealing people's money. I think, sadly, and I'm like you, Pat. I pray the guy has a turnaround and sees the light. But I know, Doc made the point earlier. He hasn't listened to a Sting or Charlotte or Wendy. I don't think he will ever listen to anyone. I think Ric Flair has to get so far down, the drain, that only Ric Flair can pull himself out. And I hope to God he does, because I would love Ric Flair to end his life on a more positive note. I don't want to see this. I mean, people will always love Ric Flair, and I am not a big fan of Ric Flair the person, but I want to be a fan of Ric Flair the person.
Yeah.
So I pray that he can make me one.
Yep. It's a tough subject. All right, and I think Benny hit the nail on the head here. I think one of the issues we're going to have is that Flair's legacy in this business, if things don't change, is just going to continue to erode, like we talked about. Because it's not just an explosion that smacked us in the face. It was erosion over time. And, yes, we can always go back and rewatch things that Ric Flair did, and I think as long as people like myself, Benny, and Doc are able to pass on and say, you want to see a great match, let me show you this match between Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. You want to see two guys that are at the top of their game on the mic, let's go watch Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. Then the legacy can live on. But the more Ric Flair erodes that legacy here and now, the new generation's not going to even want to go back and watch. Because why would you want to? We want to because we saw it. We lived it. We lived through it. And so we want to relive those memories and those moments when we knew that, or we thought that Ric Flair was somebody to aspire to. But in today's world, the next generation's not going to have that want and that need to go back and watch those matches and see those promos, because why would you? Why would they? And that's the issue that I have with Ric Flair ruining the legacy of Ric Flair. He's not passing on to the next generation. He's relying on the past to take him into the future, and that's just not going to work with the future that he's creating for himself. So, unfortunately, it's kind of a bummer. But sometimes that's how life is. But the good news is that here on the Positively Pat Sims Show, we're here to help you with feel good. We're here to help lift you up and pick you up, and we have a lot of different ways that we do that. Every Tuesday night, we have At the Movies. Our last episode, we reviewed The Mandalorian and Grogu, which, Doc, we actually thought was a really good movie. Have you seen that one, Doc?
Yeah, I saw it. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's been missing from movies lately is just going and having fun in the movie theater, and I thought it was fun.
I did too. My son Seth and I had a great time. Really loved it. Looking forward to He-Man every Friday night here on the Positively Pat Sims YouTube channel and on WANT Radio. We have Warriors Unleashed. If you're looking for inspiration and information that's going to help you in your health, fitness, and mindset journey, that's where you want to be. And our guest last night, Christopher Garbarino, was absolutely incredible. Did a fantastic job. If you didn't catch that, check it out on our YouTube channel here anytime on demand. And, of course, we have this show here every Saturday morning, and we are here for you each and every Saturday at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. And before we get going, I just got a little business to attend to. We're going to let our guests say their final words. But head on over to positivelypatsims.printful.me. That's where you're going to find all of your Positively Pat Sims merch, like this hat right here. We've got T-shirts and all kinds of stuff for you guys to choose from. It's a great website. Hey, get on over there. Check it out today. And, of course, get on over to Amazon, where you can pick up my very first book, Vengeance. That is available now at all new pricing at $4.99 for Kindle, $14.99 for paperback, and $19.99 for hardcover, to make the way for Book 2, Vengeance, Blood of the Cross, which has officially been announced as being released on July 3rd, 2026. And you can actually pre-order your Amazon Kindle copy right now. So get on over there, check that out, pre-order your copy so that you can be one of the first to read the follow-up to Vengeance on July 3rd. And, of course, get on over to any of your major audio streaming platforms so you can catch out my first all-original album, Catching Stars. It's actually me and some of my buddies, including my wife, singing with me on the album. I'm very much wanting to get that out there to everybody to hear, and I love it. I'm so proud of it, and we've got 2 all-new albums coming out. I'm still writing 3 more Vengeance books. I have got 2 albums I'm currently recording. One will be out this summer, and the next one will be a Christmas album that will be released in November. And speaking of all-new albums, I'm going to turn it over to my buddy Doc Haywood. Doc, your final words, and go ahead, plug that amazing album you got out right here, right now.
Oh, just in time for the 250th birthday of this great nation of ours. Doc Haywood's Freedom Rock, streaming everywhere you stream your music, or you can buy it on iTunes. I've created a new genre, colonial gangster rap, on a couple of these songs,
Yes.
Boston Tea Party and Betsy Ross. There's some country type songs with Taxation is Theft, and the Freedom Rock song, and Suck It Britain. It's a lot of fun. There's some spicy lyrics in there, so it might not be for everybody, but I had a lot of fun making this one. It'll be a lot of fun to play at your 4th of July barbecue as we celebrate 250 years of independence of the United States. And, of course, you can follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/Dr.Haywood, so you can keep up with all the latest stuff I've got going on. And, of course, follow me here on the Positively Pat Sims Show whenever I show up. And I think I'm going to be showing up on Warriors Unleashed in a couple weeks.
Yes, sir.
So you'll get to see the man behind the glasses and get to hear me break kayfabe on this show for the first time.
Yep. All right, Benny, take it away. It's all yours.
All right. Well, Monday night at 6 o'clock, True Crime with the Bad Girl, the Playa, and Dangerous Dave. The Bad Girl is the Boston Bad Girl, Brittany Brown. Dangerous Dave is Dave Ploss, both of whom I love dearly and have a great time doing the show. And then on Wednesday at 7:30, When It Was Real, my professional wrestling podcast with Nikita Brezhnikov, which is now in the top 150 in the United States. Now, you might say, what's the big deal, top 150? There's probably about 50,000 wrestling podcasts out there. So to be in the top 150 is pretty damn good, I think. So I'm very proud of that. And also my YouTube channel, the Playa Entertainment Network, because I've started writing songs. I have 3 different songs on there, and I have when we do our true crime podcast on Monday, we've been doing PSAs, but they're jingles. Um, so like be the heel, avoid the clap. There's a few of them that are they're very entertaining and very good. I'm very proud of them. So yeah, both my podcast as well as my music is on my channel.
Awesome. All right, Doc, are you ready? Because
I'm ready.
Unfortunately, we didn't hit our goal, but I don't care. I think Doc needs to serenade us because today we are celebrating Seth Sims' 18th birthday. Doc, lead us in a rendition of Happy Birthday.
Has he got out of bed yet? All right, let me warm up the pipes. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Seth Sims. Happy birthday to you.
Beautiful. That was
Shades of Slim Whitman.
That was awesome.
Maybe that'll inspire some super chats on the next show.
There you go. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being a part of the Positively Pat Sims show this morning. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. I want to thank my very special guest, the Diamond Standard, Doc Haywood, and, of course, Benny the Jet. Scala, for all of you joining us on WANT, thank you so much. And don't forget to check out WANT 24/7. Anywhere, anytime, WANTradio.com or by downloading the Live 365 app. Also, make sure you subscribe and follow us here for the Positively Pat Sims YouTube channel, where you can find any and all of our shows live and on demand, anytime, any place, anywhere. Thank you so much for joining us here. And as we say goodbye, don't forget what we always say, that we did not steal from Doc Haywood. Take it easy, and if it's easy, take it twice. So long, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you next week right here.
The lights are dim, but the room still hums with the echoes of laughter and the moments we spun. Every honest word is like a stone in a stream. It rippled, it lingered, it shaped our dream. And if you ever wonder where I'll be, look to the screen, I'll be there, you'll see. Goodbye to the faces that stayed in the glow. Goodbye to the voices I always know. This isn't an end, just a bend in the road. Goodbye for now, my friends, my show. The cameras rolled and the stories grew. Each review a mirror of me and you. Through coffee stains and late night calls, we built a world behind these walls. And if